This is End of Days Radio. And I am your host, Daniel, broadcasting to you all the way from that shimmering Emerald City right here in the heart of that beautiful Pacific Northwest. Today's guest, Pierre Sabak, pretty interesting individual indeed. He is somebody that David Icke has actually referenced. Big fan of David Icke. So Pierre Sabak first became interested in the subject of UFOs when as a child he saw a landed rocket in a field whilst playing outside. From this moment onwards, he has had a deep and profound interest in flying saucers. Sabak has lectured extensively on, and I'm going to have to get the correct pronunciation of his last name from him. Sabak has lectured extensively on the subject of angelic sailors and has been featured in numerous publications, including David Icke's The Lion Sleeps No More and Nexus Magazine. A world-leading expert in the field of Illuminatics, he has also served as an advisor to Ridley Scott Associates. If you want to know more about his background, go over to his website because he's got probably one of the best websites that I've seen for an author. Let's see here. Oh, go to the website, endofdaysradio.com. That's where you can get an updated guest list for everything End of Days Radio. Also, if you wouldn't mind donating to the show, I do appreciate that. This show is 100% completely free for you and me, so I will never charge for it. But one thing that really helps out is if you donate from time to time, donate $3, $5, $10, really helps me out, gives me some major motivation to keep on trucking. Helps me, make ends meet and keep the lights on. So I really appreciate anybody that's donating to the show. I'll be sure to keep doing this show no matter what. I'm kind of dedicated for life. It's almost like I'm under contract. But I do enjoy spreading truth. I do enjoy talking about these subjects. So I really doubt that I'm going to stop anytime soon. Really doubt it. I am going to go ahead and call our guest. Hello.
Hi. It's nice to speak to you. How are you doing?
Doing great. Could you help me with the pronunciation of your name real quick? Is it Pierre Sabak?
Sabak.
Sabak. Pierre Sabak. Okay, excellent. I appreciate that.
Correct.
Well,
Yeah.
Pierre, I'm super excited to talk to you. You are very well known in your field, so I've been looking forward to this all day yesterday, despite the craziness in the world. How are you doing with all the nuttiness, by the way?
Oh, there's a lot of nuttiness around, isn't there? Yeah, I'm doing absolutely fine. I'm trying to keep focused. I'm trying to sleep well. I'm doing my Tai Chi. I'm trying to meditate, work hard, keep focused, and also just trying to have some fun with the children as well. So, yeah, just trying to do everything as normal, really. What about yourself?
Oh,
Are you getting
I'm a little bit this is End of Days Radio, and this is the first time in my life where I can say that. Well, I live in Washington State here on the west coast of the U.S. and we don't get attacked by other countries. We don't have those types of disasters, so it's really shocking for us. My reality bubble is completely popped.
Well, exactly, because everything's stopping, the post, air flights to different countries. So, yeah, it's affecting everything, and it's massive. And again, there are so many different variables and so many different strands, so it's very difficult to deconstruct this. I mean, particularly even the political commentators are having difficulty understanding what is occurring and what the angle on this will be. I think it's also interesting in terms of what the fallout will be as well. So, yeah, what type of world is it going to be after this, however you want to frame it? Will it be a better world? And will we recreate the world in a better way? Or will it be a world which will be recreated in a more draconian way? So, yeah, I think these are all pertinent questions. I've just got something flashing up on my screen. I'll just close that. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, do you have a family yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I've chosen to quarantine myself because I've developed a little bit of a wet cough. So,
okay.
Yeah, it could always be the normal flu or a cold or something like that. Yeah. But, common sense tells me I should probably stay home. Nice thing is I could podcast still.
I mean, this is it, really. I mean, we're not in the circle of knowledge. It could be far worse or it could be or it may not be anything. Who knows? But we're not in the circle of knowledge. So, yes, by all means, be cautious about what the government says or be cynical about what the government says. But at the end of the day, it does no harm to be sensible and just take the precautions. That's how I look at it. So I'm doing the same thing. I'm just trying to keep a low profile. I'm trying to do what I do, which is focus upon my work and just, remain as positive about it as possible, really.
Do you feel that this is the same guys that are behind this that you will touch upon in your works? Is this is
Well,
there a hidden hand pushing this virus out there towards us?
yeah, I mean, there's always been a hidden hand, right, since the inception of human history. So again, it's what are these variables? But again, I don't feel that I'm in the position of knowledge to actually know. So anything that I say on the subject would be purely speculative, and in that sense would be meaningless. So, but yeah, I mean, I always think that these players are always there. I mean, I describe it in my book, Holographic Culture. I describe them as a parallel society because they work alongside and in conjunction with the government leaders, etc. And we also have documented evidence of this in terms of leaders speaking to extraterrestrials as well, both anecdotal sources, but also in the holographic culture as well. I mentioned that there is a Russian, well, he was from one of the Russian Confederate states, and he was abducted, and this was witnessed by a senior minister and also his driver. So yeah, I mean, the evidence is there that we are existing within a parallel society. And so things such as mass viruses, starvation, these are all things which are can be effectuated by what's going off in the background, by the hidden hand, by unseen forces. And I know in many respects it sounds terribly conspiratorial, and indeed it actually is conspiratorial. But when you get down to the nitty-gritty and when you get down to languages and begin to deconstruct languages, then you understand really what the Illuminati believe. And they themselves believe that they are descended from boats, or that they are born of a boat, the Ben Sira. So that's something that we could talk about.
Yeah, could you go into that in a little bit more detail? Who they believe that they are descended from and why that's important to them?
Right, okay. Are we kind of officially recording now? Just
Oh, my apologies. I meant to say that we began as soon as I called you.
okay, that's fine. Okay, well, yeah, I'll give you a little bit of detail about that. Well, the Ben Sira are the sons of a boat. Now, the sons of a boat actually refer to the angels or this angelic class. So, therefore, the word Malak and angel is polymorphic of Malak a sailor. Now, Malak a sailor is related to Melek, which is king. So the descendants of kings are related to angels, and the angels are described as sailors. And therefore, in English, we would describe this analogy as kingship. Kingship is one who is born of a boat. Again, this is found in many different languages. We find this within polyglottal symbolism, which is wordplays which repeat in many languages. So, for example, in the Greek, Archon is an angel or a ruler and is related to Drakon, which is a dragon, which is the seraphim. So, but again, the word Archon, which is an angel or a ruler, is cognate with the Arabic etymology Akim, which is a sovereign, and Akim is coming from Akan, which is a seraph, which is an old Babylonian word, and again is related to Ak, which is to shine. So the bloodline of the king and the monarchs and the noble bloodline, the word noble, nobilis, which is highborn but is related to know, and is also noble is also related to naval. There's a morphological switch between the B and the V, which is referring to the classical tradition. Classis is a naval fleet, but again, classis, the naval tradition, which is classical or classified, again is going back to the angelic tradition. Malak an angel is Malak a sailor. So essentially, the bloodline of the nobles are born from a boat, and they are correlated with this angelic lineage. And so this is why they are deemed as being special or different. And again, you also find the connotation within English with the English word highness. Highness is referring to the Bene Elohim, the sons of the gods, the sons of the high ones. The word Elohim, a god, is polymorphic. It also means one who is high. So yeah, this is this special lineage, which really traces its inception back to the Illuminati. The Illuminati is the symbol of Sirius. So we could go into that. So, for example, going back to the analogy of the Ben Sira, son of a boat, Sira is a diptych paranomasia. It's a special wordplay. So Sira in Arabic is Sirius, but in Hebrew, Sira means a boat. So the Ben Sira, son of a boat, is cognate with Ben Sira, which is a son of Sirius. Now, the sons of Sirius refer to the Illuminati. They also refer to the lineage of the seraphim. So the seraphim are described with fire signifiers, which denote Sirius. So the etymology of Sirius is related to Sarah, which is a spark. And this is why with the seraphim's etymology goes back to Sarepha, which is fire. Fire is used as a signifier to refer to the seraphim, which are born or which are affiliated to the star system Sirius. It's also the same with the Djinn as well. The Djinn themselves are said to originate from Sirius because there is a strong correlation with the idea that the Djinn is born from fire and that they are a fiery species, which again is astrotheological of Sirius. And again, the Elohim themselves are described as the shining ones, and we find this correspondence with the Watchers. So, for example, you see that there's a correspondence with the etymology of the Elohim. They are the gods or the high ones, and the Erin. The Erin is a watcher or a shining one. Now, the watcher or the shining one is the seraphim, because Sopheth, a watcher, is related to Seraph, a serpent, and Sarepha, which is fire. And we know that the Erin are likened to serpents or vipers because in the testament of Amram, now the name Amram means high nation, but is also used to denote Moses' father, he described the Erin as having the face or a visage like a viper. So there is this cognate between the Elohim, the high ones, and the paranomasia or wordplay on Erin, which is a watcher or a shining one. The same wordplay is polyglottal. In other words, we find this correspondence in Greek also between theos, God, theros, the watcher, and phos, which is light. And again, even if we wanted to take this back into modern ufology, we would find the same wordplay again between graze, gaze, which is to watch, and glaze, which is a luster. So again, we're finding these same analogies playing out within multiple languages. And I describe this as the artifact. And the artifact is really the alien code within human language. It points to the inception of this parallel culture or this parallel society, as I describe it within holographic culture. So that's basically, if you like, a little bit of a rundown of the Illuminati. We could, if you want, have a look at the tripartite now, the three branches of the Illuminati, but I think I'll pause there and I'll let you just interject and see if you've got any questions.
Sure. This is fascinating, but one thing that I kind of want to know to start off with is we're talking about the Anunnaki, right? When we talk about, the
okay,
angels. Go ahead.
Right. Okay, well, the Anunnaki is really a variation on what is found in the book of Numbers, which are the sons of Anak, where you get the Hebrew word Anaki, which means gigantic. Now, gigantic is another word for the Nephilim, Naphil and Naphil, which is a word play on the giants and the fallen ones. So the Nephilim are this progeny between the Ben Elohim, the sons of the high ones, and the sons of Adam. Now, the Nephilim are related, astrologically at least, to Nephilia, which is Orion. And this is why they are sometimes referred to as heroes in the Semitic, the Gibborim. But the Gibborim, again, is cognate in the Arabic and in the Hebrew with Gibbor, which is Orion. So again, the Anunnaki is really a corruption on the original word Anaki, which would mean gigantic, which would be the Titans or the fallen angels. The Titans in the Greek, again, is played with the Old Greek etymology Titan, which is used to refer to the Shaitan or Satan, which is this fallen host. We can, we can also say in many respects, and I mean the fallen angels can really be understood to be mutineering angels. So they broke away from the Elohim or the command structure of the Elohim. And we see certainly within the etymologies of government, again, gubernatio is to steer a boat, which is coming from the Greek root kubinao, which is to steer a vessel. So the governments, or should we say the ship of states, really refers to this hierarchy which is mirrored within heaven. And this is where the Illuminati trace their inception. And again, the political cabinets are related to a cabin, and we have the dock of law and the civil courts, which we have we have upper government and lower government, which are all representation of the Elohim and the commoners. But going back into the etymology in terms of governments, I think that this is very interesting when you look at the ancient words for government. So, for example, in the Hebrew word for government is shilton, and shilton is related to Satan, which originally was a political adversary or an opponent of a political party. And again, it's related to the word sultan, which is the royal progenitors of the shaitan, and sultan is related to Tanim, which is a dragon. So yeah, this is the bloodline of the dragon, which can be construed to be the seraphim or a Sarifa or Sarif, which is the noble bloodline.
Do the dragons have anything to do with the ancient dragon Tiamat?
Well, to be honest, that's not really my specialism. I haven't really studied the ancient Akkadian and the Sumerian language. I did touch upon some of these etymologies within the Murder of Reality, but increasingly I've moved away from this because it's just something that I can't verify. And certainly when I did some research into the hieroglyphics, I quickly realized that the hieroglyphs are compromised in terms of that they're falsified and that the hieroglyphs are incorrect. Now, I know that this is a very strong allegation to say that the hieroglyphs are falsified, but the fact of the matter is that the glyphs are working on word plays, and so they're highly contrived, and so this is actually showing a very clever deception. And so I'm very cautious when reviewing Sumerian and Akkadian etymologies, and I go back into the Arabic, into the Hebrew, into the Latin, into the Greek, back to the dictionaries that I have access to, and that can be checked. So I'm looking more at the modern rendition of the words, but many of these words go back into the ancient languages.
So basically, just like they do nowadays, they were editing and rewriting and using mind control on the population even back then.
Absolutely. I think that this is occurring now, and I think that you're also seeing it within the New Age, and in terms of, shall we say, the modern mythology about Tiamat. It's working as a type of myth or an allegory. Now, the wording allegory, allosagoria, means other speaking or another speaking, and this is really referring to alias, which is a sailor, which again is going back to allos, which is other or another, and this is this angelic bloodline, which is represented by allos, which is an halo. The halo is referring to the Illuminati, but they also use symbols of circles, which denote their vessels, which are the Ophanim wheels. So there is this, the terminology Ophanim was used to denote a flying saucer. So, for example, there's a correspondence between the root word of Ophan, where you get the word pana, which is to turn. So this is a turning or spinning wheel, and Ophir, which is the old root meaning gold, which is denoting this shining, turning wheel, which is equated to an angelic carrier or an angelic vessel. And so there is this relationship between Malak, an angel, and Mekar, which is a vessel. Now, the terminology vessel is working very much as in English because it's connoting this angelic carrier. And you would certainly find that within the Greek as well, between the correspondence of archon and olkas, which is a large carrier vessel, which appears in the Latin contraction ark, which is a large carrier vessel. It's an ark in the Latin is both a vessel, but is also a large boat. But again, ark has a connotation of something which is curved, so this is a round vessel. And in ancient manuscripts, in monastic manuscripts, you actually see that Noah's Ark is represented as this circular or round vessel, which is very similar to a flying saucer. And so when you're dealing with the seraphim and the seraphic host, which is this non-human army, they are understood to be crew members of vessels. So if, for example, if we go back to Yahweh Sabaoth, Yahweh Sabaoth is the Lord of the host. Now, the terminology Sabaoth is related to Saba, which is an army, Seva, which is a crew. But again, Saba and army is related to Sephar, which is a seraph. So this Yahweh Sabaoth is the Lord of this naval host, but this naval host are understood to be seraphic, and they are represented by the opening wheels, which are these angelic carriers. And again, when you actually look at the symbolism of, let's say, the throne chariot, which typically is depicted with a deity sitting on the throne chariot, you will often see a wheel which is combined with the serpent, and this is denoting the seraphic host. And so there is this relationship in the Semitic language between a seraph and Safina, which is a ship, which is equated with the seraphic host.
One thing that really fascinates me when people like yourself go in and talk about etymology and trace things back, it almost seems to me like in the ancient times, a lot of these different cultures kind of had this almost worldwide unified sort of belief system. Maybe it's the truth for all I know. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that evidence for this is found within the artifact, which is this code within your human language, and it works upon polyglottal symbolism. Now, polyglottal symbolisms is word plays which repeat throughout multiple languages. So, for example, the Old Semitic word Nua, which is a boy, is related to now, which is sunlight. In English, we'd say sun and sun, sun being a descendant of an individual. So, again, but all of this has connotations of the Illuminati and this idea of a planted bloodline. Now, this planted bloodline is really the second creation, because there are, if you like, two creations. You have the first creation, which is the manifest, the creation by the absolute of the universe. And the Elohim and the Anthropos, which is a human being, but the Anthropos is also used generically to refer to any sentient species which is self-aware. So the Anthropos would also be used in the ancient languages to denote the seraphim. They were created with the first creation, but the second creation was the corruption of the Anthropos and the replanting of the human seed upon the earth. So this is the second creation. And it's certainly found again with the etymologies of the Ben Sira, son of a boat, because Sira, a boat, and Sira, which is Sirius, is related to Yetzirah, which is creation, and Yetzer, which is a creature. So again, the boat iconography is appearing. And when you look at the opening wheels, typically the opening wheels are often represented also as baskets, because the basket can be understood to be a vessel, but importantly, it is understood to be a seed receptacle. So the opening wheels were also linked in the fertility cults with these seed receptacles, which is equated with the planting of the earth. In the Greek traditions, panspermia, in the Quranic tradition, this was the second creation. But again, the second creation is also found within Genesis chapter 2, which talks about the descendants of heaven and earth. So this is found universally throughout all scriptures. The artifact, which is this code within human language, is found within all scriptures. But I argue that the artifact is an insertion. This insertion has been by another species, and this insertion has been done on a purpose to if you like, to encode their existence, but also to control how we think. And therefore, language controls. There is a pictorial relationship between imagery and the spoken word, as there is also with the phonetic relationship of the word as well. And therefore, there is a psychic inference drawn between words which are morphologically similar. And this is bore out within word plays, and therefore, symbols speaks to the subliminal mind. It tends to work on polyglottal symbols which repeat in multiple languages. So there is this universal language which is found within symbolism, and it is this universal symbolism, and it points to the artifact. But again, because language is so closely aligned to behavior, the reason why these beings intercepted human language was to control the mind. And if you control the mind, then you control behavior. So
rather than create us from scratch, it does sound like they indeed took some natively born apes in this world and imprinted genetic code on them to make them more cognizant or more spiritual and actually more like them, like the ancient records say.
Well, I would perhaps look at it as a different way. I would look at it in terms of the ancient eyes, in terms of the anthropos, that there was an original proto-human. If you like, this was the ideal human or the model man, which was then, shall we say, genetically altered. Again, this would have included DNA from species which are associated with planet Earth, such as apes, in order to make us viable for this planet. I mean, the evidence, and again, within the Quranic tradition, Allah is described as the Lord of all of the worlds, and this is referring to the fact that the Elohim are a holographic species. And by this, I mean that they have deconstructed the mechanics of reality. They have deconstructed the waveform. So the Elohim, or the high ones, or the gods, are typically described in paradoxical language. So they are referred to as the Elakeh, a high creature, but also they can dematerialize. So they are referred to as the Ruach Elohim, the high spirits. The high spirits can also be understood to be a type of jinn. Now, the etymology of jinn comes from the wording jana, to hide or to conceal, and Djinn, which is a serpent. And this is why the Djinn typically is translated in the Hebrew as the seraphim. So the Arabic word Djinn, which was coming from the Aramaic, is typically translated as the seraphim. So there is this correspondence again. This would show that the Djinn, although Arabic commentators would argue that the Djinn are separate from the Elohim and are separate from the seraphim, I think that the etymological evidence would point otherwise, that the jinn are considered to be a fallen angels, but they are initially connected with the seraphim. In particular, the jinn, which can be translated in the Greek as a daemon, again coming from the etymology of ammon, which is to hide or to conceal, diamon, that which is hidden or concealed, through that which is hidden or concealed. But the daemons typically were deemed to be demigods, which would then unsanctioned bloodline, which would make them essentially the Nephilim.
How
but
does...
again,
Oh, I was going to ask, how does the infamous Lucifer Morningstar fit into this?
Well, Lucifer is typically described with signifiers of light, which would denote that he's a seraphim. But again, there's a word play on Lucifer, which is to tell. And again, the angels are described, or the seraphim in particular, are described as talkers. So in the Zulu tradition, for example, the Chitahori, or the children of the Python, are typically described as the talkers. And again, as I mentioned earlier, with the Akim, which is a sovereign, which is related to Akan, which is a seraph, the terminology Akan, a seraph, is related to Aka, which is to speak or to talk. But again, the seraph is related to Safa, which is language within the Hebrew. And again, the Hebrew language, Ivrit, which is the Hebrew language, is a paranomasia on Ifrit, which is a malevolent type of jinn. So it's polyglottal. It's found in all languages. In Japanese, you have the Tengu. Tengu is the heaven's god, which is this reptilian entity shown with a large nose. They're shown with a large nose because the serpent has an excellent sense of smell, so it denotes the serpent. And the Tengu is a wordplay on tango, which is a word. And again, within the Arabic, taban, a snake, is related to taba, which is taba, which is an edition of a book. So all these wordplays are found repeated throughout multiple languages.
How about the idea that these beings originally come from Nibiru? Would you agree with that, or perhaps are they from another planet or hidden dimension even?
Well, again, we're going back into the Zachariah Sitchin material, and I think when you deal with Zachariah Sitchin, and I'm no expert on the Akkadian, and as I've said, as I've studied the original Semitic, the Greek, and the Latin, and I particularly, when you compare the languages, I've stayed clear from these type of interpretations. I see Zachariah Sitchin's work as a modern mythology. It's a modern allegory. It's written in highly elliptical, highly codified language. And so I wouldn't really take too literally what Sitchin is writing about. I would see that he's part of the priesthood. Now, I refer to the priesthood as the Disciperati, the deceivers. And so I'm naturally very cautious about, shall we say, some of the modern interpretations within the New Age. And I think that this has been done on purpose to try and obscure the real teachings and the real symbolism behind the ancient insignias. And again, I think it's to discredit this subject within academia, because academia controls the discourse, it controls what people think, it steers the debate. And if academics are not prepared to actually look at, let's say, the ancient alien hypotheses and look at the symbols and how the fallen gods relate to alien entities, then it's not going to be taken seriously within popular culture. At the best, it's only going to be taken as entertainment. So I see that there is actually a psychological operation. And again, and I know this may be very unpopular with many of your viewers, but let's say the flat people who believe in flat Earth, I think again that this has been done on a purpose to try and discredit genuine academic discourse within this discipline, so that people, when you start talking about aliens, instantly they're conditioned to think, oh, you're a flat earther, this is somebody who's non-scientific, who can't think straight. So that's my take on it, and I think that this is very deliberate. They are desperate to keep academia away from this subject. The reason why they are desperate is because this subject is real. It has so many different impacts and implications. I mean, what I talk about within my work has connotations for ancient mythology, for rewriting religion, but also there's scientific correlations. It would impact, again, the study of the Pythagorean monocorde would have massive implications for the study of physics and science. And again, this idea that the Pythagorean monocorde is a string, as informed string theory, and this idea of relativity comes from the ancient Hebrew. It's not a new idea. The Latin word for space is the same as time. They understood that time was relative. So this is not a new idea, and I think it's very important that academics need to start waking up, and they need to start looking at this discipline, because this is a very important discipline. Now, I refer to this discipline, or the discipline that I study, as scaphology, which is the study of angelic boats within the religious and the mythological tradition. It's very much equated with ufology, but the ufological tradition, and again, I describe this as new ufology, which is the study of occult symbolism within ufology. And this is important because ufology didn't come about in the 1940s. I mean, they were referring to these vessels as flying saucers. Indeed, in the ancient Semitic, Sira boat is related. The hieroglyph is shown as a wheel. It's a circle within a circle. So you've got a large circle with a small circle in the center, which is used to denote Sirius. But this is a wheel, and the wheel is also found within the votive dishes. So the votive dish repeats this pattern of a wheel with a circle in the middle, which is Sirius, but is used to denote an opening wheel. And this is because they worship these boats. And so there is this correspondence in the Arabic between Sabaoth, the host, and Sabah, to praise or glorify. It's a polyglottal symbol. We find that in English with the word worship, because you are venerating an angelic vessel which was shown as a votive dish which would collect the offering or the sacrifice to the gods. And again, the nave of the church is related to navis, which is a boat. Again, in the ancient Greek, naos, a temple, sanctuary, would be related to nos, which is a boat. So again, these are all formal signifiers or polyglottal signifiers which point to the veneration of angelic vessels or boats. Again, even if you want to go back into the Japanese tradition, I mean, this is actually universal. It's endemic throughout the world. You see that in the Japanese tradition, they venerated the Utsu no Fune, which is a hollow tree or a hollow vessel. The hollow vessel in the Edo prints was shown typically as a flying saucer. Now, in the Edo temples, because it's a polymorphic symbol, the word Utsu no Fune means a hollow tree, but also means a hollow ship, which is shown as a flying saucer. They would the hollow trees around the parameters of the temple sanctuary to signify that the temple itself was a type of was denoting the veneration of these vessels or boats, which they equated with the monarchical bloodline or the imperial bloodline.
Okay, and skipping ahead a little bit, at what point do we go from sort of this overt face-to-face interaction with these beings to them slipping behind the scenes?
Well, there's always been an interface between the two, between overt contact and covert contact, but you also have to understand that this secret. It's an open secret. We have had disclosure. Believe it or not, we've had disclosure for thousands of years, but it's been a limited disclosure. It's been an open secret, and it's encoded within our governments, gubernatio, to steer a vessel, the ship of state, the angels, Malak an angel, Malak a sailor, the classical tradition of mythology. Classis is a naval fleet, which is a classified tradition because it relates to the naval tradition, which is the noble tradition, which goes back to the veneration of these entities, worship, religion, religare, the etymology of religion, religare, tamara, vessel. So this has been known about. It's found in all the symbols around the world. So there has always been interaction with these entities, and particularly there's been interaction at a secret level, at this covert level, and particularly between, let's say, the heads of state, because the heads of state are the arbitrators, if you like, between heaven and earth. And again, you're finding such connotations also with the etymology of the saints as well, because the saints go back to this hidden bloodline as well. So Hagios, a saint, is related to Aegis, which is a shield. Now, the shield is another signifier used to denote a boat. So, for example, in the Greek symbolism, Opal on a shield is related to Opalite, which is a soldier. Now, in symbolism, this could also denote the angelic host. But again, Opal on a shield is related to Pleon, which is a boat. So the shields were adorned on the outside of a boat, but they were also used as a type of missile. So they would stick large shields in catapults, and they would fill them typically full of hot sand and excrement, and then they would fling them as a flying missile. And so they would be like a giant frisbee, and they would be used to destroy fortifications and sink ships. So when they referred to a flying shield, it was used at one level to connote a boat, but at another level to connote a flying missile, which was equated with a military host. And these flying shields are therefore endemic within symbolism. And it goes back to the bloodline of the Illuminati, who represents themselves with a shield. So, for example, in the Roman world, many of the proconsuls would be carved inside of a circular shield, which would indicate that they were a descendant of a boat, by inference a descendant of heaven.
And when we're talking about the Illuminati, well, I find it funny considering what you were saying earlier about Sitchin. I was really massively into Sitchin probably about 10 years ago or so. I read every single thing that he wrote down. But
I read a lot of Sitchin.
Yeah, I still look up to the guy, but one thing he never does is he never ties this to any sort of Illuminati or secret societies or anything like that. There's even that famous story of David Icke approaching him and asking him about serpent cults, and I don't know if it's true or not, but supposedly Sitchin told him to not go there. So it really begs a question, maybe you're right. Maybe he is. I've heard that he's a Freemason, things like that. Perhaps he is part of the Brotherhood.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we can only speculate about that. But yeah, I just think it's very difficult to translate the Sumerian text, because the only way allegedly the Sumerian texts have been deciphered through the Akkadian dictionaries, which is basically Old Arabic. But again, the Sumerian language is not related to any Indo-European language, and I haven't really seen much evidence that these dictionaries exist archaeologically. So I keep an open mind. And again, what is the Sumerian language? It's not supposed to be an Indo-European language. The Hittite language was what was essentially Turkish, and the Hittite language was broken by German scholars, and they used Old High German because of the similarity between Turkish and Old High German. But again, there are so many differences between Old High German and Old Turkish that the translations must have been at the best extremely problematic. Essentially what you need are Turkish scholars doing this type of research into the Hittite language. So possibly Sumerian could have been the Hittite language. But again, you're also getting some of the oldest Gospels and some of the oldest Apocrypha texts go back into the Eastern European languages. So again, the Sumerian language could be one of the Eastern European languages. As I said, I don't know. This is one of the mysteries, and therefore we have to be very careful about his translations. The work that I do is all based upon modern Semitic, but as I said, many of these words are very ancient, so they do go back into the Aramaic. So yeah, I'm not going to. I won't go as far as to cast dispersions upon Sitchin's work, because obviously I'm not in the circle of knowledge. All I'm saying is that I've studied ancient languages, and I think it's very problematic in terms of translating the old Semitic texts, and in particular the Sumerian texts. I don't know how he did it, and so and I'm not satisfied with the transliteration of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. So we've come to a dead end there, I'm afraid. And that doesn't mean that the hieroglyphs cannot be decoded. Maybe if I had 10 years, I could probably decode quite a few of the hieroglyphs. But, that would it would probably take me a lifetime to figure it out. And there are just other books that I want to write and that I want to focus on.